When Julianna and I were planning our Cross America tour, one of our goals was to ride as many long-distance rail trails as possible. One of those long-distance trails was the OTET, the Ohio to Erie Trail, which draws a path from one border of Ohio to the other, Cincinnati to Cleveland, from the Ohio River in the south to the shores of Lake Erie in the north. While we'd heard great things about the Ohio to Erie Trail, we were unprepared for just how amazing this trail really is. Not only do you ride across an entire state, a nice line item on any bicycle tourist's resume, but you get to travel through interesting cities, through changing regions and landscapes, and through history and different cultures. For all of these reasons, the OTET makes for a perfect route for the beginning bicycle tourist. So for anyone interested in trying out bike touring for the first time, or for those of you who are already hooked but have yet to ride this amazing trail, we've pulled from our travels to bring you a concise beginning-to-end guide to show you some of what you might expect on your tour.
So it's a short ride today, but it's all going to be along the canal, and it's all going to be along this Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Anyway, on to Cleveland.
The vision for the Ohio to Erie began in 1991 with the goal of connecting several rail and canal trails and other routes already in existence. It's a multi-use trail that spans over 325 miles of parks, nature preserves, farmlands, and deep forest. Like so many larger rail trail projects, it's a work in progress, with over 85% of the trail completely off-road and guided routes along quiet country roads filling in the gaps. It includes at least 24 different trails, all developed at different times, and so the scenery and the type of riding is constantly changing. Most of the trail is paved, but there are long stretches in the northern section that are hard-packed earth and crushed limestone. While the focus here is on cycling, hikers, equestrians, Amish buggies, and e-bikes also can use the trail. Because it's mostly rail trail or along canals, and because it's Ohio, the trail is remarkably flat, meaning anyone who can ride a bike can ride this trail given enough days. We rode the trail from Cincinnati to Cleveland, southwest to northeast. It took us just over 8 days to ride the entire trail, plus a rest day, so we averaged maybe 40 miles of easy riding per day. There are towns all along the length of the route, and with minimal planning, we were easily able to find lodging or camping every night. The transportation situation could be better as far as getting back to your point of departure. There are plans for a direct rail line someday. Today there's a Greyhound and FlexBus service getting you across the state in under 7 hours. You can start your research at ohiotoerietrail.org with interactive maps, GPX files, and trail conditions, although I found the site to be a bit cumbersome for planning, and you'll likely find yourself Googling hotels, campgrounds, and other amenities directly. It's worth noting that Ohio has a bit of an image problem.
I'm from Toledo, Ohio. So
Oh, wow.
it's a nice
Very
flat
sexy place to be from. To be from.
Good
That's
place
what
to
they
be
always
from.
say about Ohio, right?
People see it as boring, the classic flyover state. If you happen to share this prejudice, my guess is that riding this trail will change your perception for good. Few states have devoted more energy and resources to bicycle travel than Ohio. And with rolling hills, pastoral scenery, vibrant cities, and lots of small historic towns along the way, Ohio is a beautiful state for bicycle touring. Our route begins in Cincinnati, crossing the Ohio and leading northeast to Cleveland on Lake Erie, the direction most riders seem to choose, although there doesn't seem to be any advantage either way. If you're coming from out of state, take a little time to explore Cincinnati. It's an historic river town full of lovely architecture and was at one time known as the Paris of America. Just across the river from Kentucky, it was a key stop on the Underground Railroad. The neighborhood known as Over the Rhine is a particularly lovely part of town. Leaving the city center, you follow Ohio Bike Route 1 and will encounter your first section of shared road riding, but only for a short distance, and with a clear bike lane, it's easily negotiated. Soon you'll find yourself on the Little Miami Trail, which follows the river of the same name. By now you've left the bustle of the city far behind, and you're following a smooth, wide, paved path beneath a verdant canopy, with views of the surrounding fields and the river itself, ideal for leisurely riding. The Little Miami is the fourth longest paved trail in the U.S. and follows the 50-mile-long Little Miami State Park, a protected greenway corridor embracing both the trail and the river. While the trail is used by some 700,000 riders and hikers annually, the river is also a recreational resource in its own right. Along the way, you ride over old train bridges and past relics of a more industrial era. Small towns provide ample opportunities for a break or refreshment, and the trail carves right through charming downtown Loveland. Our first night we spent off the trail a few miles in Mason at the Kirkwood Inn, a simple enough hotel, but the breakfast was absolutely out of this world. In Xenia, the Ohio to Erie and the Little Miami Trail diverge, with the Little Miami heading north towards Yellow Springs and Springfield, and the OTET bearing northeast towards Columbus. Xenia is truly a trail hub, with major bicycle trails heading in 5 different directions. In nearby Cedarville, we found exceptional lodging at the Hearthstone Inn, right on the trail and catering to cyclists. Northeast of Cedarville is perhaps the least interesting part of the route as the terrain flattens out significantly. This section is known as the Prairie Grass Trail, and for much of the distance the trail follows an arrow straight path through the farmland.
Just smooth pavement as far as you can see.
But all along the route you'll find pull-offs with picnic benches and other ways to take a break, and in London there's a campground conveniently placed right next to the trail. All along the route there's exceptional signage. It's probably close to impossible to get lost on this trail.
It's like a shift of trails here.
Continue straight on Camp Chase Trail.
Camp Chase Trail is our new trail.
Once you're on the Camp Chase Trail, the scenery becomes more interesting, and more urban as well. Soon you find yourself riding into the outskirts of Columbus. After a series of forested parks and crossings over the river, you're on the Scioto River Trail, which leads you unexpectedly and dramatically into downtown. Columbus has a classic skyline that towers over the parks that stretch along both banks of the Scioto. German Village is a particularly nice neighborhood, walkable and historic, with great restaurants and its own brewery district. The entire city center seems very easy to navigate by bike, with plenty of bike lanes and surprisingly light traffic. There's more than one way to leave Columbus, but we found ourselves on trails that paralleled the interstate, through less beautiful areas and a fair amount of trash. But then we were led through a series of lovely parks and soon enough into the rural landscapes once again. Also, as of now, the Ohio to Erie takes you on some country roads between Sunbury and Centerburg, but we found them to be quiet, peaceful, and very scenic. We rejoined the trail, now also known as the Heart of Ohio Trail, until we reached the turnoff for Rustic Knolls, a lovely campground a couple of miles north of the trail. This section of the OTET is gorgeous, with peaceful riding and lovely pastoral scenery. Before you reach Mount Vernon,
Wonder what this is.
stop to take a look at the Raston Observation Tower, which provides a bird's-eye view of the town. And Mount Vernon is definitely worth a look, with a lovely town square and a fascinating history.
Johnny Appleseed. John Appleseed Chapman planted an apple orchard near here at the confluence of the Kokosing River. That's some pretty cool history.
Here, the trail section is known as the Kokosing Gap Trail, full of interesting historic sites along the way, including a picturesque arched bridge carrying US 36 over the trail. A complaint sometimes made about rail trails is that they're a tunnel through the trees. That certainly isn't the case here, with deep forest interspersed with sweeping views of the abundant countryside.
The Bridge of Dreams. Well, that's a sweet name for a bridge.
Further along, you'll ride over a crowd favorite, the Bridge of Dreams, a 370-foot-long covered bridge that spans the Mohican River. Beginning in Glenmont, there's probably the longest gap in the trail, where riders are routed onto State Highway 520. We found this to be one of the highlights of the entire route, and while some people complain about the road riding and the lack of shoulders, we found the traffic to be light and the drivers polite. This is Holmes County, which has the largest concentration of Amish in the world, and although much of the time you'll be riding on roads, the landscape is exceptional and you get a different perspective than that you would find on the rail trail. And there's no doubt that riding through the Amish region with its simple way of life provides a fresh take on an America that has, for the most part, disappeared. At Kilbuck, a small town with good amenities, you rejoin the Holmes County Trail, taking you through Millersburg, an excellent town with one of those gracious old hotels. One of the fascinating things about riding this trail is that you get the privilege of sharing it with the local Amish community with their typically, but not always, analog way of traveling. We found the Amish to be exceptionally friendly, and often found ourselves engaged in conversation with them. They always seemed interested in our travels and our non-motorized means of moving around the country. Between Fredericksburg and Dalton, you're back on roads, but once again we found the riding to be fabulous, with sweeping idyllic landscapes in all directions.
What do you think, babe? Out of 10 stars, what would you give this ride?
9.75.
9.75.
Just outside of Dalton, we came upon a rest stop for bicycle tourists, a place to get some shade and a drink of water, and if you're lucky, enjoy a warm conversation with a genuinely kind and generous soul. He's even a warm shower host if you find yourself there at the end of the day.
And I think that's kind of what God calls us to do.
I
Plant
could
the
not
seeds
agree more.
And
Yep.
He'll do the watering.
Up until Dalton, the entire trail has been paved, but upon rejoining the off-road route, you'll find crushed limestone for the first time. Now you're on the Sippo Valley Trail, which takes you into Massillon. Massillon is a bustling small city, was once a major steel town, and it was here that professional football got its start, along with nearby Akron and Canton. This is where the Ohio and Erie Canal towpath trail begins, which will be your route all the way into Cleveland. The canal began operation in 1827 and led to the fledgling state of Ohio being the third most prosperous in the country for a time. It's still maintained as a water supply for local industries. There are interesting historic sites to see all along this towpath trail, a nod to the day when the canal was more than just a bike route. Canal Fulton is a particularly nice stop. From there, it's a short ride into Akron, once known as the rubber capital of the world, with B.F. Goodrich, Goodyear, Firestone, and General Tire all headquartered here back in the day. I can personally vouch for Luigi's Restaurant on Main, one of many outstanding old-school Italian restaurants we found along our travels through Ohio. After Akron, it's only a few miles until you reach the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, established to preserve the canal's historic significance to the nation. Here the trail is properly titled the Ohio and Erie Canalway, and not long after leaving Akron, you find yourself surrounded by the kind of historic and scenic wonders done the way only the National Park Service can. This lovely marsh, we were told, was a garbage dump before the Park Service cleaned it up. An old steam locomotive runs through the area, and a massive fruit market just off the trail encourages you to stop and browse. The town of Peninsula is loaded with old artifacts from the early days of the canal, and the entire stretch north is loaded with history, scenery, and even a wood plank trail surface over marshlands. This stretch of the Ohio to Erie Trail is absolutely fabulous. Soon the canal takes you into Cleveland and the shores of Lake Erie.
Every few feet it's just getting a little bit more urban.
Once you've reached the Cleveland script sign at Edgewater Park, you'll know you've completed your journey. But since you're in Cleveland anyway, why not take a minute to enjoy the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the West Side Market, the House from A Christmas Story, or a host of other sites and points of interest. Cleveland has come a long way since the Cuyahoga River caught fire, and is no longer known as the Mistake on the Lake. At 326 miles long, the Ohio to Erie Trail earns its reputation as one of the U.S.'s most impressive rail trail projects. From Cincinnati to Columbus to Cleveland, from the sultry waters of the Miami to the historic valley of the Cuyahoga, this trail takes you on a journey you won't soon forget. Whether you're a beginner curious about bike touring or an old pro, get the OTET on your list of must-ride trails. You'll be happy you did. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course, share with anyone you know who might want to know more about the Ohio to Erie Trail. Until then, happy trails.